All right, everybody. Welcome to your very favorite Spider-Man podcast. Here comes the Spider-Cast. I'm your co-host, Mike L, and as always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell, and today we're going to be taking a look at Spidey comics from October of 1984.
That's right, and we have a very special guest joining us, Al Piper.
Hello, everybody.
And Al, you've been a guest on the Comic Book Syndicate before. One of our more popular old episodes, that's the one where we compared, remember Batman to Dark Knight?
Yes, I remember that well.
Yeah, that's the gift that keeps on giving. And just recently in the news this week, Dark Knight was added to the National Film Registry. That's an honor that has only been bestowed on one other superhero film. Does anyone know what the other film was?
I would assume the first Superman?
Of course.
That would have been my guess as well.
Yeah.
You got that right. Those are my picks for the best superhero film for sure.
Mm.
But anyway, Josh, what's your favorite superhero film?
Oh, I don't know. That's tough. Favorite and best, I think, are two different questions. Like, my favorite one, the one I watch all the time, is Into the Spider-Verse.
Really? That's a good film, yeah.
Yeah, like that's... I think it's arguably, possibly not the, like, best quality one, but it's my personal favorite, the one I go to all the time.
What about you, Al?
That is a tough one, but it's funny you mentioned Into the Spider-Verse because we just had this discussion around the family supper table, and we all agreed that it was probably one of the best that's been around. Mm-hmm. But I'm still a sucker for the original Superman, the Tim Burton Batman, of course. You know,
right.
They're really the first ones to come.
Right, I agree. Yeah, I mean, the Tim Burton Batman has its flaws, but there's still like a magic that it captured, right? Like the style,
for sure.
The art design, which we talked about on the Comic Book Syndicate, like the music, everything. It was just magical when it came out.
It's got so much charm.
Right,
sure.
right.
Yeah.
Great actors, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we're here to talk about Spidey. So we're going to talk this week about comics from October 1984, when it's still in the middle of the Black Alien Symbiote saga. Al, are you a fan of the black costume Spider-Man?
I am. I always have been, actually, right from day one. I thought it was really cool. I was always glad to see him go back, to the traditional red and blues, but I did enjoy the black costume over the years.
Right. It's just a very cool era, and we've said this before. It's really hard to duplicate. Like, they tried to give Spidey a new costume for Civil War, the red and yellow with the three arms, and that didn't catch on. They gave him like a Tron costume. They gave him a Future Foundation costume. None of those costumes catch on, right? Nothing can ever duplicate the novelty of this one, I don't think. So, yeah. So we're going to talk about Amazing Spider-Man 257. This is the continuation of Spidey's first encounter with the Puma. I used to pronounce it Puma when I was a kid, but it's Puma. I mispronounced a lot of words when I was a kid. But anyway, so, this is, again, Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz. Spidey is in the middle of fighting the Puma, and then Black Cat comes in to save the day. Spidey is still injured from last issue. He's got like a dislocated arm. And Puma is tracking him down, but he's also gaining a little bit of respect for Spider-Man, right? He's starting to learn that he's a formidable foe, and he's starting to have second thoughts. We'll see. So Spider-Man goes back to his apartment, and once again, we're developing the subplot of this alien costume. I don't know why Peter Parker hasn't caught on, but Felicia is definitely like, okay, something's not right about this frickin' thing that has like a mind of its own. I think you should look into this further, but whatever. So then there's this subplot with the Kingpin and this new character in the criminal underworld, the Rose, and like the Rose is, the Kingpin is pissed off with the Rose because the Rose has ordered the murder of Spider-Man without talking to Kingpin, right? Mm-hmm. And so he's pissed off, and so then we cut back to Puma in his apartment, and Puma's going to go back and fight Spidey again. Meanwhile, Mary Jane shows up, and she's kind of being a nuisance, so Peter has to boot her out of the apartment. Spidey continues his fight with Puma, and then Mary Jane's trying to break into the apartment. She ends up breaking in, and of course, the apartment's now been completely destroyed by their fisticuffs. We cut back to Kingpin and what's his name, the Rose. Kingpin puts the Rose in his place. That's like a running subplot. of the kind of power struggle between those two. Puma and Spider-Man fight. They make their way into like a what's it called, like a gym. They have a pretty interesting fight here, throwing like barbells at each other and stuff. And Puma throws something out the window, and Spider-Man's got to catch it before it injures anybody. And then basically Puma just decides, you know what? I think I'm just gonna leave Spider-Man alone because I want to. If I'm gonna fight him and kill him, I want him to be at full strength. So I'm just gonna leave him alone and go back home. And then basically at that same moment, he gets an order from what's it called, the Rose? Or no, he doesn't. Not yet. First, what happens is we cut back and wait, correct me if I'm wrong. No, the Rose basically rendezvous with the Hobgoblin, and the Hobgoblin's gonna he's gonna help him out. We don't know exactly how yet, but yeah, in that scene, we did find out that Thomas Fireheart got orders to cancel the contract on Spider-Man, which is kind of a coincidence because he decided he wasn't gonna kill him anyway, right? And then at the very end, Mary Jane comes into the apartment, and she has a huge revelation, right?
Absolutely.
She just can't cope with the fact that Peter Parker is secretly Spider-Man. So after, almost 25 years, Mary Jane has finally figured out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. I think in the movies it took maybe 1 or 2 movies, right?
Yes, by the second movie.
Yeah, quite a bit longer. So that's it. So, Al, since you're our guest this week, why don't you tell us what your first impression is of Amazing Spider-Man 257?
Well, I hadn't read this arc in quite a while. I was quite surprised at the mediocrity of the art and the writing, I have to admit. Thank God for 1986 when things started to finally come around.
That's right.
And I have to say that that reveal at the end, I didn't remember that reveal coming. I was like, really? She doesn't even know at this point yet?
Right,
I thought everybody knew by now. I mean, it's the second worst kept secret, right next to Matthew Murdock's secret identity.
Right.
But it's certainly the stronger of the title at this time. There's no doubt about that.
Well, first let's talk about the art briefly. Josh and I have been talking about this, same art team for a while now, but I think we both agree that the penciler Ron Frenz is great. It's Josef Rubinstein that kind of brings the art down. Do you make a distinction between those two? Do you think that the storytelling is good, or do you think that overall it's just mediocre?
I think overall it's just mediocre for in the grander scheme. At the time,
right.
It may have stood out a little more. Again, we're looking at this book, how many years later. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to remember what everything was like at that time. But the inking, I had trouble distinguishing the inking in this one. It tended to blend together a little bit for me. I don't know if that's because we were still at the time in pulp paper or, with the glossier paper stuff tends to separate a lot nicer and you can really make out the division of the inks and stuff. But it seemed a little muddy to me overall. Okay.
So, Josh, what's your take on this issue compared especially to the previous issues of Amazing we've been reading?
I mean, I feel because maybe the pencils were the same, I didn't really notice much of a difference. I also don't think it really helps that I'm reading one of the recoloring
right
versions of this comic, so I feel like I'm also not even really looking at the original art sometimes. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to kind of say, especially with the comment about the pulp or the glossy paper. I reading just this issue by itself, I don't think I would be even able to tell either way.
Tell either way what?
What it was printed on originally.
Oh, I see.
Because it's completely... It's almost like it was, it feels almost redrawn because the colors are so different.
Yeah, that's
you know what I mean? It's got a completely different feel to it.
Right.
So.
And that's the thing is that one of the things about the inks, I don't think the inks are good at all, but I think the inks would be better on pulpy paper.
Mm-hmm.
Because when everything is solid like this, it's hard to explain, but it almost brings to the fore how messy the inking is. you know? So
Right.
maybe you could hide that in pulpy paper, but when it's so vivid and in your face, it just looks like crappy amateur art, you know? And
Right.
this is something like most of our guests have agreed on. Like, and the thing is Josef Rubinstein at the time was a big inker. Like, he inked almost every page of the official handbook of the Marvel Universe. And, you know, I grew to dislike his inks as a kid because he made everyone look exactly the same in the Marvel Universe, you know? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I definitely am not a fan of the inks. Although I do love Ron Frenz as a penciler, and I know he's a great artist, so I can forgive that. And I think that if he had a better inker, the art would look good. But overall, what do you think of the story for this one, Josh?
This one, it was very ambitious. A lot happens in this issue. There's a lot of things that they're trying to struggle, and I think maybe there's just too much going on for it to like properly flesh out like a good story, because you have the drama from that we normally get in Spectacular Spider-Man with Black Cat coming in and kind of talking about not wanting to share her secret powers that she just received, which I think up until recently had pretty much stayed in Spectacular. It hadn't really crossed over into Amazing too much, and if it had, it was normally just like a page or a panel to kind of just show that it's the same universe.
Right.
And then you have the dynamic with Kingpin and the Rose, and then MJ coming in, and then Hobgoblin is back. Did we already talk about Hobgoblin still being alive?
I honestly don't know.
Is
oh
this
no, I think he was in Shadow, right? He was in Shadow last time.
So this is the reveal of the fact that Hobgoblin is actually alive, and then the next page we get the reveal that MJ knows Peter's secret. Like, it just so much happens, and it really feels like they're juggling all of these things all at once, and I don't think that the juggler catches all the balls by the end of the issue. They kind of all fall on the ground because it just happens. I mean, I think leading up to the end, I was buying into it, but then it didn't really pan out.
Yeah, not a great issue, but I think compared to the other ones this week, it might be the best one. Yeah. I'm going to give it a mild recommendation. Al, do you recommend this comic?
I do, simply because of its place and time. We're just learning about the black costume and getting a feel for its origins and stuff, and knowing where that leads to. It's really kind of a vital link in that chain. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And Josh, do you recommend it?
I don't know. It's so tricky to say. I don't think I would go out of my way to particularly recommend this issue of Amazing. Like, if I had the stack of this whole year, this would not be the first one that I would grab.
Right.
Like, this would not be the issue of this like arc or this era that I would go to give to somebody to read Spider-Man for the first time.
So it's funny.
I don't think I would say not to read it, but it's not the one I would go to. So yeah, I guess recommend in that sense.
It's funny because when I was a kid, I had all these issues of Spider-Man, but for some reason, upon one of my rereads, there was a handful of issues in this run that I just decided to sell because I disliked them so much. I knew I was never, ever, ever going to reread them again. Little did I know I would start a Spider-Man podcast in 2019, and my words would all be lies. But anyway, okay. So now we're gonna move on to
before we move on.
Go ahead.
I think that I might get in trouble if I don't mention Shirtless Kingpin in two different parts of this issue.
Oh yeah, that's right.
This is kind of like a recurring bit that we always talk about it, but we get Shirtless Kingpin twice.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
We could make a drinking game out of this, eh?
We probably could, and we probably should, to get ourselves through the next issue that we've got to read, which is Marvel Team Up number 146 with Spider-Man and Nomad. I mean, okay. Well, I'm gonna try my best. Again, I'm sorry, everyone who's listening to this that has to hear me try to sum up these ridiculous Marvel team-up issues. But after this one, there's only 4 more left. So
That's right.
Oh, there's a light. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. So we catch up with Spider-Man, and he shows up to a car crash, and he helps save a woman. And in the crowd, there's a man named Jack Monroe who is Nomad. So he kind of sees what happens, and he makes this comment, which I actually really liked in this issue. We'll talk about this more, but he makes like an offhand comment about how I bet you this guy doesn't have to worry about anything in the world. He's got it made. He's a superhero. And then we catch up with Peter Parker as he's about to get mugged in an alley. And Jack Monroe shows up, and Peter and Jack team up against this like gang and beat them up and scare them off. This little kid is there, and he kind of sees this going on. He's part of this this gang too. And he'll come up later. So Peter and Jack decide to have kind of like a little bro date, and they go see a movie together, and they're hanging out. After the movie, they're reenacting scenes from it, and the little kid bumps into them, and he steals Jack's envelope. I can't even remember what the significance of the envelope is, to be honest. But they lose him in an alley, so they decide to split up, and they actually each don their own superhero identity, and they run into the gang, who's in a meeting with Taskmaster and Black Abbott.
And just
It's
like
so
behind
ridiculous.
like a grocery store, yeah.
Yeah, they're just like there in like this military jeep in a parking lot. It's ridiculous. But
Right.
The little kid shows up, and he tells them what happens. And Spider-Man and Nomad show up, and they start fighting, and we see Black Abbott's powers. I'm not sure if this is a new character that's being introduced. I don't think I've ever actually heard of this character before. Black Abbott.
I will look him up, but I've never heard of him, that's for sure.
So I
It
think
rang
he's a
no
new
bells
character.
for me at all.
Yeah, I think he's possibly a new character being introduced here. He's got this like weird cloak that's kind of like diamond shape, and it's big and boxy, and he's got these robes, and we learn that his power is to be able to like zap and like use energy, and he can actually the energy is so powerful it can disintegrate people, and we see one of the goons get disintegrated after trying to leave the gang. Anyways, they start punching each other. Taskmaster is punching, and Spider-Man is hit with one of the beams, and he's at the whim of Black Abbott, and he's about to get zapped. Black Abbott is like charging up his hand to disintegrate Spider-Man when Nomad picks up Taskmaster's shield and throws it just at the right angle for Black Abbott to touch the shield, and the energy bounces back onto his own arm, and his hand is disintegrated. We don't actually see that in the comic, but that's what Spider-Man tells us what happens. Taskmaster pretty much says, "Yo, I'm out of here. I got my money." Black Abbott, off screen, runs off because he's in pain, and then there's a fire, so they have to. So Nomad and Spider-Man run into the building, and they save the kid from earlier. And the kid decides he wants to be a superhero just like Nomad. He hands over the envelope and runs off. And yeah, that's pretty much what happens here. Again, it's just kind of a big issue of things happening for no particular reason besides that's what the script says. I mean, even the art in this issue doesn't actually show you what happens half the time.
No.
Things just happen, and Spider-Man has to say, "Oh, Black Abbott must have ran off after his arm was disintegrated." Like, none of this was shown.
Right.
Like, I don't know. Nothing of importance happens. I think that the possibly the strongest part of this issue is earlier on when we're first introduced to Spider-Man and Jack, and the fact that like it makes sense that the two of them are together and hanging out, because normally the two superheroes are just kind of mashed together because that's what wouldn't it be cool if this character and this character teamed up and they kind of just like squish them together? This felt a little bit more natural, like these two would have already been hanging out, so it makes sense that their superhero identities teamed up together in this issue. So I don't know, it was all over the place. What did you think about this issue, Mike?
Oh, I got to the end and realized I had zoned out halfway through and had to go back and reread, starting from the appearance of the Black Abbot, because I'm like, what in tarnation is going on? So I had to reread the whole issue. Then when I went back and I looked at that first appearance of Black Abbot, and there's like 3 giant captions of text, I'm like, oh my God, I won't have to reread this again. So I kind of just skim read it. But yeah, it's just a lot of nonsense, like, I enjoyed the beginning just like you did, and I'm a huge fan of the film Rio Bravo, so I thought it was funny they were going to see Rio Bravo. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I mean, I like the Taskmaster, but the way that he's just randomly training these guys in this gang, and they happen to be the same gang as the issue that Cary Burkett wrote, because, these writers come and go, and so I guess they're just bringing back characters that they used before. And I mean, Nomad's kind of an interesting character, but really, at this point, I think they're just scraping the bottom of the barrel because they know that it's being canceled soon, right? So, not a great issue, not a great story. I can't really recommend it. Al, what did you think of this issue?
Not only would I not recommend it, I would suggest that by page 3 or 4, when they get to go see Rio Bravo, I was like, you know what? I think I'll just stop reading this and go watch Rio Bravo, because that would be more interesting.
You're right.
Although I will say that Nomad suit, it keeps going for decades and decades. The swashbuckler boots and the cape and you can't go wrong with powder blue swashbuckler boots and a cape.
Do you like the low cut, the deep V, the deep N?
Yeah.
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 Anyway,
it's so strange. I mean, I feel like even the art this issue was particularly lacking. Like, the layouts were really bad. I didn't understand what was happening half the time, both because of the dialogue and the art. Like, we see, so on original page 10, we see Taskmaster for the first time in this issue, and we see that he's talking to this gang, and we see like a far shot of him kind of like directing this meeting, and then the next page we have this bad guy all of a sudden in the middle of this group. Like, he just appears out of nowhere. I was super confused. I thought that when I was first reading the introduction to him, to Black Abbot, I thought maybe it had changed to a different scene, because it was just like so out of nowhere. And then we kind of see him in the background when the kid runs in, and then it just jumps to Taskmaster. And like, if you look on original page 11, we see Black Abbot. The next panel, the kid's running in, and you see in the background Taskmaster and then this cloaked figure. And then the panel after that, Black Abbot is just gone out of the panel again. It's that Taskmaster is there and Black Abbot is gone.
You mean on the next page?
No, the next panel.
Yeah, unless that's him back in the shadow. You mean, like the last panel of page 11?
But isn't that not Taskmaster's shadow?
Oh.
Because Taskmaster's on the right.
I don't think so. No, because if you look on the left, they're standing right next to each other, so I can only assume that that's him behind him, not his.
But his body stops when the ground starts.
Oh, jeez.
So you see how it's like the shadow on the wall.
So here's the thing. If you go back to the original page 10. This is not how you introduce a character into the story. Like, he's just standing there.
Right.
You know, like there's no build up. Like wouldn't you show people listening to him talk first and then save the big shot of him as like a reveal? Like, oh my God, the Taskmaster's in this story. That'd be a big deal, right? But they just... Well, but the thing is, then the very next page, then they introduce this other guy, and then, like you said, he disappears, and then he's gone for like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages, 4 or 5 pages. Like it's just right. Badly planned out, right? What were you gonna say?
Or even show that Taskmaster is in this group and also scared.
Yeah, or something.
Right? Like, because we know who Taskmaster is. He's a recurring villain in Marvel Comics, and he's also shown up in Marvel Team Up before as a main villain. So if we show him in this group of gang, like the middle of this group, and he's also scared of this shadowy figure, and then we do that reveal of him stepping out of the shadows and like introducing himself, that kind of adds to him being scary. But right. This guy just starts talking and then disappears in the other panels. I mean, the next page, like page 12, he's on the other side of the alley, like Taskmaster, right. Like he like jumps around. I have no idea where this guy is. I don't really care about him. Like there's nothing about him is intimidating. Even his like power, we see him disintegrate one guy and then that's it. Like nothing. We don't even really see him attack Spider-Man. Like we see him disintegrate the guy on original page 17, and then the next panel we see of him, it's just his hand, and he's like pointing it at Spider-Man. And then all of a sudden he has Spider-Man and he's about to disintegrate him, and Spider-Man has to like narrate through thought bubbles what happened. Right. It's so strange.
It just feels like you said, there's a bunch of stuff that happens, but nothing is planned out to be dramatic or logical. And the same thing is with the art, right? Like the art does not tell a dramatic story. Even in like the Marvel style of plotting, where the artist would plot out most of the story, it was done with a purpose to make things dramatic, right? Like to make you want to flip through the pages. But like I said, this thing was so all over the place that I forgot what was happening and I had to go back and reread it. So clearly this thing's a massive failure. Al, do you have anything else to say about it?
No, you pretty much nailed it. There was nothing saving this issue. Even the writers and the artists didn't seem to care. I think the more attention was paid to the fact that Jack Monroe was going on about, movies these days don't have what they used to, that they made a point of getting that agenda through, and everything else was just kind of like thrown in there for no reason whatsoever. It was definitely the weakest of the whole lot this week. Right.
Yeah, and we've been very critical of Marvel Team Up, and as we said, it is being, like, at this point, they knew it was being canceled, and it's soon going to be replaced by Web of Spider-Man. So, like we said, there's light at the end of the tunnel, but this issue, none of us recommend it.
Not at all.
All right.
No. In fact, just go watch Rio Bravo and move on.
That's right. Yeah. And I've got it on Blu-ray, so I can do that anytime. So, anyway, okay, so now we're going to jump to Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. Al, would you like to summarize that one for us?
Sure. We've got Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, number 95, which is entitled The Dagger at the End of the Tunnel, but it should have just been titled Where in the World is Dagger, because that is everything going on in this story. Black Cat and Spidey are regrouping from their big battle. Spidey's still having trouble with his black costume, doesn't seem to want to listen to him very much. Silvermane is on the move again. He's now got this connection with Dagger, and he's seeking her out. We have another character called The Answer, another one that I didn't even remember. I had to go back and look at his bio because I was like, this is just drawing a total blank for me. But he's conversing with the Kingpin, and they're also, they need to get a hold of Dagger, find out what's going on here. So they all hit the streets at the same time. Everybody's looking for Dagger. Meanwhile, Cloak and Dagger are back in their rundown hideout, discussing the fact that she's having some issues with her powers and that, and Cloak needs her light, right, so he doesn't get sucked into his own darkness. But then we get to one of my favorite sections of the story, which is, and they've used this a few times throughout this year of comics. I think they even allude to it when Web of Spider-Man starts, and that's the black costume takes over the unconscious Peter Parker and goes out on a little adventure of his own.
Right.
How you can be web swinging through the city and not be woken up, I'm not sure, but I always enjoyed those little moments. Like I say, it did happen a few times throughout the series. Swings past Black Cat, and they all join in again on the hunt, and everybody's heading for who knows where at this point. Then we cut to the Kingpin, who is looking over Vanessa, who's had her ordeal in the sewers, which I think actually just ties straight in from the Daredevil at that time, if I remember right. Again, it's been a while since I've read that. But that was the thing that actually surprised me the most with these books that I was reading, was how much they did tie into each other.
Right.
We're into eras now where we have, these big all-encompassing storylines that supposedly tie into 20 books, but other than maybe a mention of something, they never really tie in, where these directly have panels that, allude to what happened in the other issue.
Yep.
Because we even have the Rose back on the phone again, trying to find out what's going on with everybody, and, where's Spider-Man, where's Dagger. And we follow everyone around, and then, of course, they finally all come together at an abandoned, probably warehouse again, like usual. Mm-hmm. We have the fight of the week. Spider-Man sleeping through it, of course. Or, no, I shouldn't say that. Peter Parker sleeping through it. Spider-Man himself has witnessed it, but he works his way back to his apartment. Then he gets a call and realizes that this stuff is going on. He has to swing into action again. Mm-hmm. And we have the showdown on the docks with the Rose and the Answer and Cloak and Dagger and some random goons. Everybody's just all looking for the same thing at the same time, and it's basically a setup, I think, by the Rose to bring everyone together. And it's just total mayhem for a while. And like usual, ends on another nice little cliffhanger. Cloak absorbs a bunch of people. Dagger gets stolen. And we're left to wonder what's going to happen. But all in all, it wasn't too bad of an issue. Certainly probably the second strongest of the four that we looked at this week, because there is seems to be a cohesive storyline running through it, and it goes from A to B to C to D. You're not jumping around too much.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I didn't think it was that bad. I mean, most of Al Milgrom's run has been kind of just above mediocre. This one's a little bit better, probably because I like Cloak and Dagger. I like whenever they show up. And I like the ongoing storyline with the Rose, and especially how it ties in with Amazing. So yeah, this issue was definitely not bad. And the art, as usual, was okay, mostly because of Jim Mooney's inks. And even though the art's not great, it still has a classic feel to it. And for that, I like it. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that the issue is fine. I think that the story, for the most part, works. It's the dialogue for me that feels really awkward and unnatural. Mm-hmm. Like, it feels like Star Wars prequel dialogue at some points. Like, it's just so, like, stilted.
Right.
I mean, in particular, the last page, Cloak is narrating what is happening to him out loud. Mm-hmm. Like he's like involuntary. I think. He needs to like absorb people's energy to like use his power. Mm-hmm. So he's like sucking up all these goons into his cape, which is like another dimension, his cape.
Right.
So he like takes all of the drugs. He takes all of the goons that are trying to steal the drugs, and then Silvermane purposely runs into the dimension in his cape. And as all this is happening, he's like thinking about the fact that it's happening, but narrating it out loud. Like he's
Yep. It's the worst part. Sorry, go ahead.
It's awful. He's actually saying, but wait, even as I enfold them into my cape, Silvermane enters my darkness as well. But why? What possible reason? No matter, I will take him and his light as well. Like, he's saying this out loud.
Yes.
It's just so
like,
strange.
It takes him like 45 seconds to say that, and it takes Silvermane a split second to run into his cloak. Like, if anything, in a typical comic book, that would be a thought balloon. Even it would still be awkward, but it would work better as a thought balloon, right? Like those split-second thoughts that you have. But to say it out loud, you're right, is ridiculous.
It would work better as a radio show.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other thing. Yeah. Like, and we know the comics at this time, the dialogue is going to be really expositive, I guess. But anyway, this is bad. This is really
I'm
rough.
just so confused as to what happened on this last page, too. So the answer comes in and swoops down and grabs Dagger from Silvermane's arms. Right? So we see him fly up into the sky with Dagger in his hands. Spider-Man says, he's too high for my webs to reach, which is ridiculous because he's Spider-Man. He swings through buildings.
Right,
but this dude a couple feet in the air, he can't reach. And because of that, Dagger is now just gone. Like, in Cloak's eyes, oh, well, she's gone, so I guess I better absorb as much energy as I possibly can. And after absorbing everybody on the dock besides Black Cat and Spider-Man, he then jumps into his own cloak, I think. Like, yes. Like he just like disappears. Like he also jumps through this dimension. Why? If he's after Dagger, he just disappears? Like, she's still on the dock with the answer. They're still there. He hasn't left yet.
Well, no.
It's just so strange.
They've flown away. We just don't know how far they are by that point. We're assuming they're too far away.
But, like, Dagger... Cloak is looking at... Like, he's literally 1 foot away from Silvermane while he's holding Dagger. Dagger gets swooped up, and then he just gives up and says, well, I guess I gotta just jump into my portal. Like, why didn't he just run after the answer? It's just so strange.
Well,
because we were already on page 23 and didn't have time anymore.
Right, that's really the answer. Like, that's exactly it, for sure. Yeah.
You gotta wonder... Yeah, well, and it's funny too because I was gonna say maybe the artist and writer weren't communicating, but it's the same guy. It's Al Milgrom doing both. So, yeah, you gotta wonder, like, what happened there? It's a confusing mess. Ew. Yeah. So here's the thing. Like, I don't hate this issue. I give it a mild recommendation. Josh, do you recommend it?
I don't think I would, honestly.
Okay.
I just think that it wasn't strong enough for me to, like, go out of my way to give somebody this issue. Like, it's not something I would, seek out to recommend to anybody.
Al?
Yeah, no, you don't have a good Spidey issue. You don't have a good Cloak and Dagger issue. Mm-hmm. There's really nothing there to sustain you. You read it once, you let it go. And we've all moved on since and never looked back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what about this cover, though? I do like this cover.
Yeah.
Anyone? I think it's great.
Yeah, the cover's pretty cool.
It's very indicative of the times. It actually reminds me very much of the early New Mutant stuff. I'm not sure
like
why,
Bob
but just the softness to it, the way it's laid out. It's not your typical spectacular Spider-Man cover, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's good. Like, I mean, Al Milgrom gets a lot of heat, but this is a pretty good cover. There's no dialogue, there's no text. It's just a nice image. And so for that reason, I actually used it for the thumbnail this week because I thought it was so good. But anyway, so yeah, kind of a middling issue of Spectacular Spider-Man, and usually that would be the wrap-up for the week. But alas, there's an annual. Marvel Team-Up Annual, right, Josh?
Yeah, that's right.
Don't worry, it's the last, Marvel Team-Up Annual ever. Yep. Yeah, just when we thought we were done, it pulls us back in. So we're going to tag team to summarize this issue because there's so much going on. I have to point out, this is written by Louise Simonson, who I'm a big fan of, but this is her first issue ever, I believe, of Spider-Man. And one of her first scripts, as far as I know, and unfortunately, you can tell. Yeah. I think Louise Simonson's known for kind of writing, overwriting her dialogue, and that is definitely true in this case. The story, I don't know what to say about this. We come in with Peter and Black Cat, doing their thing as usual. And then we cut over to the Collector, who I'm not a huge fan of. I barely know what's going on, but the Collector wants to collect Alpha Flight, I guess. And I don't remember anything.
Yeah, he's after Plodexes.
What's that?
He is after Plodexes and
oh, right, which is Marina's race, right?
Yeah. Right, which we come to find out. But, this has got to be a very early mention of Plodex in comics. Am I right? This is all getting to be jumbled for me over the years. But,
considering I've never heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, they've come up over the years. It's been used. In fact, I think in some of the original Miracle Man stuff, he even talks about Plodex.
What the heck is Plodex?
Yeah, they never really explain. Is it a race? Is it just this energy form that this guy's able to track? But it has been brought in a few times. It could be one of those MacGuffins to just explain something that's unexplainable. I'm not sure. But,
I just looked it up, and it was introduced in Alpha Flight by John Byrne. It says it's an alien race that originated on an unknown world. But as far as other mentions, I don't really see many other references to it. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is incomplete. But anyway, back to the story, right? You still there, Al? Did we lose you?
Yep.
Okay. So anyway, again, I'm looking through this issue. I just read it yesterday. I have no idea what happened. I think the major problem, sometimes the big mistake Louise Simonson makes, is that in this issue, I want to read a Spider-Man story. I don't want to read a story about Spider-Man with aliens and just I'm looking through this issue and where are they? What is happening? What is going on? Why are they doing it? That's just the feeling I got for the whole issue.
See, my thing is I don't mind seeing Spider-Man out of his element. I don't mind every once in a while, especially on a special occasion like this, where it's a Marvel Team-Up Annual. Sure, send Spider-Man out into space, have him get sucked up by this, giant who wants to send him on a mission for the Collector. That's kind of the fun of Marvel Comics, but the story has to be good. I have to understand what's happening. I need to understand the events and the characters and why they're there and how they got there. I don't really understand how Alpha Flight got here. I don't remember really anything besides the fact that the Collector's trying to collect a bunch of alien races. He's there for Spider-Man, and I think he ends up trying to make a deal with Spider-Man and sends him on a mission by shoving him through a clam. I don't know. It's just so much junk. It happens. Everything is just flashing on the screen. The pages are all filled with dialogue.
Right.
Just pointless, useless dialogue that doesn't need to be there. I think that this is the opposite of Marvel Team Up this week, where we don't see anything in the art, and we have to understand what's going on through the dialogue. This one, we see way too much of what's happening, and then we have to stop and read what the characters are saying and thinking about it instead of just showing us what's happening. And it's just so...
If I had to guess, I would say the driving force, now that I'm going back through this page by page, I think the driving force of this issue was there was a sale on yellow ink that month. And they had to use it all up because these pages are just page after page after page of yellows and auras and... Oh, it's a mess. It's so busy.
Here's the thing is, I actually think the art itself is pretty good. Like, Paul Neary is, like, I think he's more known as an inker. Like, he inked Brian Hitch on the Ultimates and stuff like that, and I've definitely come across his work before. And I don't mind this art at all. I just think that it's just maybe too busy. It's just way too much going on. But the actual art itself, I don't think there's a problem. I think it's the story.
No, I agree. The line work is actually pretty nice in it. The first couple pages, I was really, really worried. Actually, page 1, there's a panel of Peter Parker at the bottom of page 1 that is just atrocious.
Right.
But then from there, it actually starts to get better page after page with the actual line work. But like I say, just the color scheme in this issue is just off the charts for the yellows.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like if you took just one panel from any point in this issue, you would say that it's objectively good art. But I think altogether, I don't understand what's happening in the story just through the art. And I think that's a big problem. And it's just every single panel is just so unbelievably busy, and there's way too much going on that I just get lost, and then having to kind of catch up through the dialogue, and it's just it's a rough issue. I still don't really understand what happened. I will say it's a physicist's wet dream, though, because at one point they take water, a liquid, and inject it with a gas, and then turn it into a solid. So, I mean, we're just doing everything in this issue.
Well, and the crazy thing is we haven't even mentioned that there's 2 stories in this issue, and the second one is even worse. And I try, No Place to Run. If you go past the Alpha Flight story, there's another
4-page backup story,
and it's drawn by David Mazzucchelli.
I liked it.
Really?
Yeah, I thought. I thought.
Tell us what happened, because I don't know.
Okay, so it's really just. It's not. I think it's. It's a really good story for being only 4 pages. It's just this random couple that we see in New York, not New York City, but Albany, New York, and it's just them having a normal life. They're trying to kind of have like a. Just kind of survive, be with each other, and be happy. And then it's them hearing about news of these bad guys, these supervillains. I believe it's Crimson Dynamo, who's wreaking havoc in a city that's extremely close to theirs, or in their city. And it's about the superheroes coming in and saving them, and they're scared that the danger and the fight is going to end up where they are. So it's just kind of them listening to the reports and watching the news, and kind of realizing that everything that's happening is happening to the entire world, and it's not just isolated to these heroes or to these places where the heroes live. It's kind of these world events, and it's kind of spreading everywhere. And I don't know, I thought it was kind of nice to peer into the life of a normal person in this universe. Now, if this was a full issue, if this was like a full 30 pages, I would agree with you. But I think that the fact that it was just like a small little backup story, I kind of enjoyed it.
Well, here, as a scene, like, it's not a bad idea, but I just felt to me, it didn't feel like a full story. That's why I didn't like it. I just felt like, what was the point of this? Like, yeah, it's not a bad idea to show this perspective, but I just thought that the way that it was just... explaining everything and then ending on that silent panel, which is well drawn, and again, it's a good idea. I just didn't get anything out of it. But Al, what did you think?
Yeah, I liked what they were trying to do, but yes, it didn't connect with me at all. I mean, yeah, he had settled in this smaller town because he thought, he'd be safer. It's sane here. I think it actually says in the dialogue, it's sane and safe. And they find that their world is now being encroached upon. And then, like you say, it rests on this last panel, which is basically, these are now the thoughts that are keeping him up at night. I like the idea. I just didn't find that it really conveyed it all that well. I think for this type of story, it's been done much better in more recent times. I mean, in 1984, it was probably no one had thought to do it. But by the time you get around to Astro City, Life in the Big City, or even Marvel's itself, where you're starting to look at this stuff from a real world perspective, those stories have much more impact. And they were trying to do that with this, at least. It just, I didn't really connect with it myself.
Or don't forget Damage Control, right? That's sort of...
oh, yeah, absolutely. I forgot about that.
Yep. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess maybe I didn't give it a fair shake, but I just didn't get anything out of it. But I definitely like the art by David Mazzucchelli, because he's one of my favorite artists.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm guessing this is still fairly early in his career, because I did not remember this at all.
Yeah, he also drastically changed his style once he got to Daredevil Born Again, and Batman Year One, right? So, but anyway, so this issue, we didn't really say much about it because, there's it's like 30 pages, but almost nothing happens, and so I definitely do not recommend this. I mean, the art is good, but as a story, no way do I recommend this, and I'm never going to read this again. Al, do you recommend this issue?
No, I'm with you. I would probably never even, if I had it in my collection, if it was in a trade, I'd probably skip it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I couldn't go back and read this again, I don't think.
Right. Okay, Josh, what do you think?
No, I don't even want to really think about it again. Let alone read it.
Too traumatizing.
Yeah, it's... Let Marvel Team Up die.
Now, Al, you said something like, "Oh, thank God, 1986 is coming." Is there a specific era of Spider-Man that you're looking forward to, or that you like?
No, Spidey for me was actually the 70s. He was Spider-Man was my whole world in the 70s and that whole period. And while historically it's not the greatest, nostalgically I think it's the one that I always go to. I actually have a hard time with Spider-Man anymore. The last, I would say, 15 years, I've really only read it cursory, just kind of pick up an issue here and there just to keep tabs on what's going on. Because it does nothing for me anymore. And the character isn't the same anymore. It's not that same everyman, young, it's just become this big overall storyline. Every week is some cosmic event or some big event that they're tying into something else. So no, I certainly don't look forward to Spider-Man anymore. All I can do is go back and read some of my favorite issues from the 70s and pick up trades of stuff that I haven't read in a while and just try to re-enjoy that.
I'll have to agree with you. I do love Spidey, but I think the jump the shark moment for me was when they published the Norman Osborn, Gwen Stacy love children story.
Oh, good grief.
Yeah, like not only did it make me stop buying Spider-Man at that point, it just... I cannot believe that Marvel published that story.
Yeah.
And it's just such a slap in the face to the character that I don't know. It's just unforgivable. You're right. It's not really the same character anymore. But that goes for a lot of, Marvel and DC characters, unfortunately. And I don't want to be the guy that's like the old man yelling at the cloud, but unfortunately a lot of it is true, especially for characters like Spider-Man. But anyway, when we do get to... I personally think that there's better stuff coming by Peter David. So perhaps when we get to that era, we'll have you back on the show. What do you think?
Sure, yeah. That'd be great.
Awesome. All right. So hopefully next week Jolie will be back with us. She called in sick today, so unfortunately she missed out. Although maybe it was fortunate for her because of the quality.
She might have touched.
Yeah, she might have came out on top anyway. So next week we'll be back to our regularly scheduled program with G.I. Jolie in tow. And Josh, you can take it from here.
Yeah, we want to thank you guys so much for listening. It really helps when you leave us a review over on Apple Podcast, or you can drop us a line on Twitter at HCTSpidercast. Please let us know what you guys think about the episodes and the issues that we're talking about. We really want to keep that comic conversation going.
That's right. So until next Monday, this has been Here Comes the Spidercast.
All right. See you then.